This episode of Capes and Lunatics is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. Get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
This is Luca Parrott, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
This is Jam DeMatteis, and you are listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
There's a thin line between heroism and madness.
Here, the line fades to nothing at all.
This is a world of Capes and Lunatics.
And nothing is off limits.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics Saturday morning edition. I am Phil. Joining me as always, the queen of the armadillos herself from Florida. It is...
Good morning, it's Lilith Hellfire.
And the man of many opinions, no, not Charlie Esser, the stashless, well, he's got some hair on his face, the Doombot himself.
That's right. That was the whole intro? No, Rob Southgate? Thanks a lot, Phil.
You need no introduction. They know you here.
You don't know your own name? Okay.
Phil leaves a space that you could drive a truck through there.
Oh.
Jeez,
don't make him start using drops this early. You're going to make him self-conscious. He's going to be nothing but drops.
No, I don't need to search for drops.
Yeah, right. All the drops are me, so.
There you go.
Yeah, because, he's already telling me.
You're weak sauce.
Oh,
what's on
nice!
the agenda?
You got me saying weak sauce. That's awesome.
Please kick me in the pants.
But don't ask any questions.
You know what? Seriously, if I could have Phil follow me around, I'd never have to talk again.
Just make it rain with a tip jar.
It rain.
What did you say?
Oh, man. These are all good, Phil. You're going to use them all up, though. People are going to be bored of me already. So what are we here for, Phil?
We're here to talk some indie comics, everyone's favorite indie comics, Rob. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but...
not a bit.
Yeah, you and Charlie Esser have no opinions.
That's right. I had to fill in for the professor. We had to get a real professor in here.
Burn.
Burn. I know. We have plenty of real professors, just like Charlie.
I know. We got Will. We got Kristen.
Oh, that's right.
It's like a Futurama's writer's room.
Maybe I want to step back.
We're so highly educated.
I'm an adjunct professor, so sorry, guys. I'll step back to the back of the room.
All right. So who wants to kick it off? There, our indie comics chat.
Well, so Phil, I want to get going here because the reason this episode came to be, and the reason you guys enticed me to get up at 8 a.m. Chicago time, was I was already up, but the reason that I wanted to come on was I am a big indie comics guy. I love talking indie comics, and the other day we were on. Okay, what the listeners don't know is you guys have this private chat that I wish was a public chat because a lot of times it's the best part of the show. There's all this really great stuff going on there. You guys talking to each other, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I jumped in because somebody mentioned something with indie comics. Might have been you, Lilith. And,
it's always me.
And then I think it became you and I, like, back and forth. Ooh, did you read this? Ooh, did you read that? I love indie comics. And I said, you should do one like the episode 69 about indie comics. And Phil went, done, booked, and gave me a date and said, okay, you're going to be on. Okay. And then all week he kept saying, are you actually going to be on? Like, he's so not trusting, but I've been waiting all week for this. So, but you did lose a Southgate. She might end up joining us for a minute, but my daughter Molly had things to say. And, as Lilith pointed out, she's a teenager, so she is not up yet.
Yeah, we asked for the Molly. We got the Rob. Sorry, folks.
Yeah. Disappointing. I hear that every time I walk in a room.
Whoa.
Mark my words. Look, I've got my C2E2 coffee cup going this morning.
Ooh.
Yeah, pretty cool, huh?
So
I miss cons.
Yeah, it was funny this morning. I was thinking about this because it's very strange. I started thinking about cons just like maybe a half hour ago, out of nowhere, I had this memory of the first panel that I did. So I can lead you down the path. I started thinking about the panel we did in Indianapolis at the Indiana Comic Con, not Indy PopCon, but the Indiana Comic Con. We did 3 panels one year. It was awesome. We filled the room, 300 people in this one. It was awesome. But we did one where I pulled in a bunch of our podcasters from Southgate Media Group, and we all sat up on a stage, and it was supposed to be about like, what's it like to get into podcasting? But the room had 200 and some people in it. So of course I can't resist. It turned into me making a lot of jokes, and at the expense of a Lil, basically. And I started thinking about that, and then I had this memory way back, and this ties into indie comics, and this is why it came up. Way back, the 20th anniversary Chicago Comic Con, before it was Wizard World. In fact, I think before Wizard Magazine was a thing that became Wizard World, right? It was the 20th anniversary Chicago Comic Con. Martha and I had come out with a zine. It was called Disgraceland. And at the time, it was actually not called that. It was called the Dead Elvis Fan Club. And it was just all jokes about Elvis, right? We didn't care about Elvis. We thought the whole thing about making Dead Elvis a character was a funny thing. So we wrote this zine, and it had, illustrations in it. It had all these jokes in it. And we ended up being a guest of honor at the Chicago 20th Comic-Con. We sat there in Artist Alley. Here's a funny thing. I sat kitty corner across from these 2 guys that they were like, God, your stuff's so cool. And, oh, man, you guys look like you got it going on. Because we look professional. Because when I walk in, even if I'm not, I try to give the illusion that I know what I'm doing. So we had a banner, and we had, like books, and we had a Dead Elvis cosplayer and like stuff. And they're like, wow. Yeah, the guys sitting across from me were Rob Schraub and Dan Harmon. Yeah. And they had a comic book. There were 2 improv guys out of Minneapolis, and I had done improv here in Chicago. So they were like, oh my God, you do Second City. And like, they were like all over me. And trust me, I'm nothing compared to what these guys have done. But it was just like, I remember that because they were so into it. And I was like, guys, I've only done like 3 issues. My wife and I have only done like 3 issues. We just look polished. We polished a turd is what we did. And they had this comic book called Scud, the Disposable Hero. And I just found it the other day. I have a signed drawing of Scud signed by Rob. Because he was like, oh, let me sign your book. Because I was getting all these other people. And I have some cool ones in there, but they're real obscure. They're things that, like, unless you're really deep into indie stuff, you wouldn't know who Smoot is or anything like that, That's like super obscure, but it's not. Skip Williamson was a big cartoonist. And I have him in that same book. So I was thinking about that, and then I was thinking about, wow, I actually hosted a panel then. That was the first panel I hosted. I had never seen a panel. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And it was terrible. But I had some really big artists up there with me who I can't remember who they are, but one of them, it wasn't Gail Simone, but it was Lilith, you might know who this is. She was a writer, I think, in comics. She's a big name. Maybe she was a writer. I can't remember, but she was a big name, and she had written a book about women in comic books. Do you know who I'm talking about?
There's been a couple of those books.
I'm looking it up too. But she was on the panel, and I had this really interesting conversation with her while the other ones just sat there going, "Can we just pitch our books?" But it was really cool. And if I saw her name, if I saw the book, I would know it immediately. The book the cover reminds me of Kristen's book, The Boy Wonder. It has a similar cover to that, but it was all about women in comic books, which at the time was really an anomaly. And here's another weird thing about that. Not only was I terrible at this, but we had an issue because the show was run by a woman. It was all these women that I was working with, but they didn't want Martha on the panels because she was a woman. And Martha and I had to stand our ground and say, we're a team, but there was such sexism, and it's that systemic. Yeah, and especially we're talking 1990, maybe 89, and it was like, so I had to refuse a different panel. We did this one because it was like a talk show panel, and we knew, okay, we've got this writer up here, and we can talk about that a little bit and address it, which the fanboys didn't love, but I could have talked to her all day. But they asked us to do other things, and Martha and I, because they didn't want Martha, they wanted the man. Mm-hmm. We said no, we're not doing it. And
what Wizard World panel was that? It was the one we met up. Was it 2015?
Oh, that we met?
Where they talked about that, and she says how like all the women that are like in management are very much tokenism, but like they're not allowed to say that. But she said it in so many words, and it's still so very true.
Yeah, that
and it's 2020 with Me Too and Time Up, and all this stuff. It's still very rampant in the comic book industry. It's ridiculous.
It really is, and indie comics is where you can see the breakthrough in that. But it seems like as soon as they sign a deal, it becomes all about the guys, and it's like a small percentage of women. It's just like with us with podcasting. You know, when we started this network, we said our goal was 50% women. And we're always looking.
And they're all over here on the Capes Network. No, I'm kidding.
Well, actually, one of the big things in the start, we had Blair and all of her friends that we brought in, and then we had you and we had
Dawn, we had Kelly.
Yeah, right. So we did have right away. Right now, I'd say we're a little less than 50%. But we're doing all right. Our big thing now is
we're Martha and Molly on a few more podcasts.
Good God, they do. They're on more than I'm on at this point. Isn't that crazy?
The superior Southgate. Oh,
it's
wait.
True.
Phil, nobody told Rob.
That's not going to work today, Lois.
All right, I think I filibustered enough about all this stuff, but man, if I can think of her name, I'm going to find it because she was so fascinating. It was such a great time. I met, like I told you, I met Dan Harmon and Rob. I didn't stay friends with them or anything. It was just that one time. But I met this other guy, and if I could figure out who the lineup was in Artist Alley at that Comic-Con, this guy was one of the funniest people I ever met in comics. He was hilarious, and he thought our stuff was hilarious, so his taste wasn't very good, but he was really funny. And I also met Scott McCloud at that too, which
nice.
Yeah. And man, talk about indie comics. Zot, come on. Zod is an awesome book.
A lot of people actually know the true definition of an indie comic. I'm not talking like your Hellboys and your Walking Dead. I'm talking about like, that's like another umbrella at this point now. I'm talking about real small comic, creator owned. You know what I mean?
Right.
That has like their freedom and independence.
I was thinking about
Archie's CBS to, DC and Marvel's ABC and NBC, As much as I love Archie, they're an institution.
I was thinking about this myself, like how we were going to address this. I knew you'd have thoughts on it. With indie comics, we can define it as Marvel and DC are the not indie comics, and then everything else. But I don't think that's really fair.
Because IDW, boom, they're consistently battling for 3 and 4, making real numbers, doing a lot of licensed properties and things like that.
Yep.
So I like their originals, but the licensed property stuff has just become such a moneymaker for them. I can't blame them. Then you have like Valiant that I really love. I have Vault, Scout Comics, Aftershock, things like that not a lot of people talk about. And I try to make an effort when we do discuss comics on Capes to like always kind of include an indie number 1 to get somebody in the right direction.
You know what? I love it, Lilith. I'm with you. See, this is where the definition was. I was trying to decide, are we going to talk small press versus indie? Because those are two different things.
Yeah.
Small press falls under the umbrella of indie, but it's kind of like our network. We have a podcast network. We technically, this show would not be considered indie because you're part of a network, but really we are an indie network.
Yeah, we're not like, the So
We're not like
Golden
Wondery
Spire
or-
and things. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But we're still good in our own right. But it's just we do things a little different, and that's kind of like that small press indie versus like say a Walking Dead, Hellboy. Then you have things down there like Bloodshot, which got its own movie. So now it has to move to the Hellboys and the Walking Deads.
Yeah, it got its own movie. And actually, I was just talking about this the other day. It's kind of sad. I haven't seen the movie yet. I want to. I heard it was good.
It's Vin Diesel, so you know what to expect.
You know what you're going to get.
Very much in the vein of Jason Momoa being Vin Diesel being Vin Diesel, but I love him. I happen to love him. He's a very non-problematic person, so I'll support it.
Bloodshot. He just says, I am Bloodshot over and over, but he has different inflection every time. It's amazing. But that movie was supposed to be the launch of their cinematic universe.
And it happened during the pandemic, and it was still like the #1 movie, but at what cost?
Well, but at what cost? It it was Trini Robbins.
Oh, I was just looking at her. I was like, is he talking about that?
That's
that book she did. Yeah.
And that's who I got to interview. Oh man, was she awesome.
Yeah, she is. She does a lot of guest speaking now, or she used to, like back in the early 10s. So yeah.
Yeah, she was really cool. So that was a real pleasure. And that's why we did it. It was like, okay, we're going to stand our ground, but here's a woman who's going to be up here. We can address it, even though this crowd.
Yeah, fanboys don't want to hear it.
No.
I mean, they're woke now. In 2020, everybody's suddenly so woke for profit.
Woke for profit.
That's corporate wokeism, if you will.
That's like you guys were talking about the sexism and stuff. And I'm like, can the comic industry really afford to be sexist at this point?
Well, it can. There's a lot of old white guys with no kids that just have nothing better to do.
Yeah, but if you're like, hey, you could like double your profits or more if you include more women, wouldn't they?
Because it's a systemic issue, they can't see past their own selves. Like I was talking about DC, how like that median age is something crazy like 55 or 60, and I mean, outside of like Jim Lee and a couple of others, it's very white, comics so white, if you will. So, it's that whole systemic thing when you have nothing but old white men talking to each other and they create that bubble. And this is what we're seeing specifically at DC, why it's such a mess. They can't get out of their own ecosphere and their own heads to like make money. Absolutely true. Hopefully the change that we have going will stick. Like that's how attitudes and that change. Like even though it's almost right now forced and like you said for profit, there are enough people that hopefully that message is getting through and it will eventually tip the other way, especially as some of these unwoke older generation start to die off. And hey, you're talking to a 52-year-old guy, so it's not like it's but like you're still willing to learn and have conversations. You're not closed-minded, and this is my way, and this is the only way. I missed the 50s when America was great, kind of guy. Oh my God! No. Oh my God! No. Was it so much right? For some people, it really was. That was the epitome of America. Although I will say it might have been fun because you could say beaver in public quite a bit. So. Well, I mean, if you're Jimmy Pomotti or Amanda Connor, you can still do it. Phil, are you even here? I forgot you were here. Oh, I know. He's just here to moderate and keep us on track. You do read a couple of indie. Well, indie, I'll use that in rabbit ear terms.
Well, I was going to say, is Image like indie?
They kind of are, but it depends on which property you're talking about and things like that. But not Walking Dead. Walking Dead is its own, thanks to the TV show, unfortunately, is its own behemoth. Now.
I mean that book's over, but yeah. Let's
go back though, Lilith. That did start as an indie thing. In fact, Robert Kirkman's whole thing was very indie. Yes. Look at something like Outcast. Yeah, it got made into a TV show, which is really good, by the way. But that book, very indie. The way it was presented, the way it was drawn, the concepts in it. I mean, to me, Kirkman is like a big time indie guy that broke through. He's a great model to follow if you can do it. If you have the patience and the time and the understanding of how the business works. Yeah. Like Phil and I, when we talked about like how he ended the book, it was like, wait, what? It was like such a surprise. It was a gut punch, but going out on your own terms is something that, only a indie comic book creator can do at this point. Especially a series like that where the book was still selling. You know,
like hotcakes.
And the show was still out. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
the
that
show,
show's going to be here when Molly has grandkids. So it's the new Supernatural, guys. And she's going to spin off and spin off and spin off.
As long as it keeps making money. Yep.
I'm okay with it. I watch all the spinoffs. I love the show. And it's the kind of show that even if it takes a dump, like one of the shows takes a dump and you're like, it's over. All it takes is one good concept and boom, it's right back.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I like the indie comic book into TV show trend that Netflix is doing. I think Umbrella Academy, they've done it really well, even though I don't kind of agree with some of the twists they've had to do for the adaptation. End of the Effing World was absolutely fantastic.
First season
I'm not
was
okay. Well, that kind of.
Second season was good. It's just the problem with the second season is it didn't focus on our heroes the same way. But I loved the new character that became part of the 3. And I thought, wow, this is really that, like, they had an idea, but I think they rushed the idea possibly.
That's something Netflix loves to do. They do sometimes, especially with shows that are like geared towards teens, they like to like film back to back and pump it out because they're so confident, and then that confidence unfounded.
Yeah, well, the other thing they like to do is they like to do 3 and
cancel.
Out. Yeah.
This is not Disney in the 90s. That model doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. I mean, look what they did with Sabrina. They did 3 and a Christmas special, and they're out. It's like that was a big hit.
Her ratings have dropped because the writing quality dropped because the executive producer was stretched so thin because they were wanting a third spinoff, and that spinoff didn't actually happen. And that's where he was focusing his time. That's why that season 4 feels so rushed.
Yeah, I didn't see season. I only watched the first couple episodes, and I thought they were really cool.
It's a great book, by the way, too. So, and a friend to the show, Kelly Thompson, is now writing that new rebooted version. So,
cool.
Which I love Kelly Thompson. She does a lot of great work, a lot of great indie work too. The work she did on Gem and the Holograms is just like, honestly, I love the work she did with on that book. So.
And stay tuned, the beginning of October.
Better than the movie, honestly. Don't watch the movie, read the rebooted comics. You're good. And
she'll be back in the beginning of October to talk her new Black Widow comic.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what she does with Black Widow. But yeah, I think a lot of artists that I like in the mainstream, like Chip Zdarsky, they absolutely kill it.
Yeah.
Because Chip Zdarsky has this book called Stillwater. I think it just came out like either last week or this week. And they just have so much freedom. And you just see such like this variety and things that they're allowed to do in an indie sphere that they just can't do in a mainstream book. So I'm always happy when I see one of those mainstream guys get a creator-owned book, because I'm just so excited to see what they have to do with their new freedom. And that's really why I love indie books, especially at this moment in time.
Although his Daredevil is really good right now.
It's amazing. But if you pick up Stillwater, it's got this creepy gothic element, which I really like. And that's just not something that you see in his mainstream work. You just get to see this different side of him. And I'm a fan.
But no, I mean, you guys were talking about the shows. Like, I think some of the shows help some of these creators or their work get discovered. Like The Boys. I never read The Boys, but I think I'm about to do a deep dive on The Boys comics after.
Oh, you have to.
The comics are so good.
Second volume. Yeah, the second volume is a little more cerebral. It's a little more backstory exposition dumpy, but fun. But definitely, you need to add it to your collection. I think that came out in like April or something.
Yeah, but because I was watching the newest episode last night, and I was like, oh yeah, I gotta.
And the comic is better. Like, I do like the adaptation because all those characters are super white, and we find out there's a reason for that. But like, I do like the adaptation that they do and kind of the things that they change. I appreciate, but the comic, but I just like Garth Ennis's take on superheroes. I don't think that it comes across as like disapproving as it does in the comic books. Like, I just don't think you can market it to actually how the comic books were written. Like, that might be very off-putting to some people. But if you know Garth Ennis's work, then you know.
Yeah,
like,
right.
They did Preacher and things like that. It's just like even Preacher was like really gritty and like almost to the core of what it was. But you read the book and you're like, oh my God, really?
I didn't know after having read the book. I was like, how are they really going to pull this one off? Because my God. But I think they did a fairly good job with it. You know what? That's Seth Rogen's company that did that. They're the same ones.
And he's a fanboy, which I appreciate.
And they're the same ones
that has the dedication, effort, and time to actually like care about the product.
Right.
Looking at Kevin
Smith. And it's his company doing The Boys.
Exactly. So he gets it. Like, he really, like, this is the thing that I was talking about yesterday. everything feels so passionless on the corporate side of DC, Marvel, and even to the extent Dark Horse is getting there. They're too focused on that Joss Whedon, Buffy, and Angel stuff as much as I used to love it. Like, it's to its detriment.
There's Corey.
Hey!
Hey there,
guys.
Corey.
How is everybody?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm good. Apparently, I don't know the difference between Central and Eastern. I've been wrong about that every time I've ever tried to do it.
Corey, I got to say, you just jumped right into a hornet's nest. We've already talked about sexism in comics. We're arguing out about what an indie comic really is. You really stepped in it, man.
Oh, I can't hear you anymore. It's all breaking up.
He's like, I'm not getting canceled over this.
Sorry, Dottie. I can't hear you.
Corey has an insight. He's a indie creator.
That's right.
How would you define that as being a
which part, the indie or the sexism?
the indie? We'll ease you into it. How do you define an indie comic for yourself? What's the difference between that and working on, say, mainstream stuff?
So for me, the easiest way to say it is you're indie until your Kickstarter gets 200,000. No, I'm kidding. You're indie until you've done more licensed work, more Marvel DC work, more. Even now, the smaller studios, if they're doing, when you're getting paid to make comic books, you're not indie anymore.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, Corey, if you think about it, I mean, yeah, there's varying degrees of indie, but I think indie has to do with how much corporate control there is over it. When when you're driven by advertising or bottom line, like a Marvel or DC is.
Well, but
they have their creative end, but they also have suits controlling things. You take something like Lilith just said, Dark Horse, they're leaning more towards that because they're seeing, hey, we can make more money if we do some of these licensed properties and that. But that doesn't mean that some of their books aren't still indie flavored.
But something can be indie flavored without being indie. I mean, I feel like Dark Horse is not indie. I don't think Dark Horse is indie anymore. Dark Horse hasn't been indie for
but it was.
The last decade. It's not
sure. Sure.
No, it's one of the big publishers now. They're one of they're one of the three,
top four, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in an industry where there are 15 publishers, then your top 5 or 6 probably aren't indie publishers anymore.
No, I agree with that.
And so for me, I have a really hard time saying Dark Horse is an indie publisher at this point. They do mostly licensed work. Their best work is licensed work. I don't disagree with that. But I don't think that changes. They're part of the establishment now.
Sure. Would you call IDW indie?
No. I don't. But I also don't think IDW ever was indie. They were pretty much always licensed work, which comes with those corporate implications. I'm trying to think of. I think when they very first launched, they tried to do their own little universe type stuff, but for the most part, they've been licensed for their whole duration.
Okay, here's a tougher one then, and this I know which way you're going to have to fall because of what you just said. But what about Boom Studios?
Oh yeah, it's a corporate mess right now.
It's not indie, but they're trying to be like the cool hip company.
Right,
but they're not indie. I mean, Boom, Aftershock, those guys. Anyone paying page rates for creator-owned work, they're not indie.
There you go. That might actually be where it's at.
That hit the nail on the head for me. Yeah,
that's it, Corey. Because I've got good friends with Tango Comics, and they are definitely indie. But their stuff, I think it stands tall with these other creators. But they are definitely indie. I don't know if any of their guys get paid.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like,
God help them, they have an Indiegogo going right now. So
I don't think it's about quality. I just think it's about.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not.
I think there's a lot of publishers who can do good work, but
I think it's about cash flow. I think it's about like advertising dollars and all that stuff. It's just like with radio. So take radio. We used to have this station here in Chicago called WCBR, which was a tiny little indie radio station. Was way down on the dial. It was pretty cool for about a minute, right? You could buy airtime on there for like $100 for an hour. At the same time, literally like half a turn or a quarter turn up was WXRT, which was a behemoth of a radio station in Chicago, where $100 wouldn't get you in the door to ask how much advertising was. So they always claim like we're the indie music channel and all that. Like, yeah, you're playing indie music, but you're not. And CBR was the indie one. But as soon as CBR money started flowing there, first of all, it went away, but it started not becoming an indie channel. It had a different flavor. What they were playing became different. Money started flowing. Advertising started controlling what was happening. I think that's really where it comes in. It's just like with music. Yeah, like when Nirvana was on the cover of Rolling Stone with the corporate music still sucks. They tried to keep their independent spirit. Money was flowing around them, but they tried to stay out of the eye of that storm until eventually they got caught up in it.
Well, and I think once you sign to a major label, you've lost the argument that you are now an independent band.
Yeah, I think that's true too.
I mean, Dave Grohl tells some funny stories, but one of them, it's a funny story about a drum kit. But at the end of it, the A&R guy buys him a new drum kit, and it's like, yeah, you're not an indie band anymore. Like,
you didn't have to struggle and go hat in hand to your parents. Hey, man, can I get $300?
Right. So, I think one thing is like when you take anyone's money for advertising, it does make it more serious. I don't know that specifically.
No, but I think it's the level it's at.
But even that, I don't necessarily think so. I think there are opportunities. I think Tyler, the Creator, signed a really cool deal with Reese's or one of the candies, Kit Kat. It was with Kit Kat. Tyler, the Creator, signed a deal with Kit Kat, and it's a pretty large deal, but it doesn't change how Tyler, the Creator, operates or what he makes. And in the sense, and he is completely independent in the sense that I think he just donated $1 million to the school district. So it sounds weird to say he's completely independent, but he's completely independent in the sense that he's not signed to any labels. He doesn't have the team.
He's not beholden to people.
Yeah, strengthening that argument, look at Dan Klaus. I would argue, even at this point, Dan Klaus, who's had movies made of his stuff, who has some of the best books I've ever read. I'm a huge Klaus fan. He's definitely independent spirit. He's definitely an indie guy, even though he had a deal with Coke. He was making Coke cans. I think it was Coke. This is a guy who broke through in a lot of ways, but if you meet him, like, he was at Quimby's Queer Store unannounced, just doing a signing because he was like, "Oh, I'm in town and I can do this. I can do whatever I want. I don't have a corporation telling me what I can do." It's like I know somebody who was with iHeartRadio and they said they were so excited, and then all of a sudden they went, "Oh my God, my hands are tied. I can't do your live marathon. I can't retweet things that you've done because they're telling us what we can do now."
Yep, they got a whole team running your whole image, what you can and can't do, and got to be careful about that too.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we're going to screw down on Phil a little bit because he's a wild card. So that's a joke. That's a joke.
But I do think it's a little silly. Marvel and DC kind of makes their people unavailable for media and for podcasts and for stuff like that. I think that.
Well, I have big feelings about DC and how they run things.
We've gotten a few Marvel creators, but yeah, DC, it seems like it's hard to get anyone from DC for like a podcast or anything.
Yeah, you got to get the guys who are on the fringe, the outside. I don't mean guys like men, but I guess maybe we do sexism talk again.
Well, it's like 92% or whatever it is. So I'll allow it.
Right. You can get the creators, but when you start getting into, the people that are there, okay, I have a contract, I'm writing the new Batman book. You're not going to talk to them.
No. Well, I think it was when they gave Iceman his own series here last, and it was by the okay, I'm going to say it this way. I don't mean it this way. The young gay writer that was basically, Marvel was like, hey, we've got a gay guy.
Oh, right. When they were like, hey, look what we have.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And they basically told him he couldn't do interviews and stuff. And
that was to a detriment, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Spoiler, they probably had a lot more than they realized.
Well, yeah. and Robert Kirkman famously said that when he wrote a bunch of stuff for Marvel, basically cashed in right after Invincible kind of hit. I think he did like a whole batch of 2099 stuff or something like that. And he was like, okay, I'm ready to do some interviews. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to do that. And they basically poo-pooed all of it, and we're like, no, we'll tell you when you can do the interviews and stuff like that. Like, you got to run them all by us. And Kirkman, being an independent creator, was like, what? Like, why am I scheduling? Like, I can just do these. Like, it's no problem at all.
Yeah. Yeah, well, actually, we met Scotty Young this year. We've met him a couple of times, and he wanted to come on Molly's, my daughter's, one of her shows, Read Between the Lines, where she talks about books, and he was like, dude, I would love to come on, and gave us contact information. As soon as we reach out to the contact person, they're like, nope, can't do it. Couldn't do it. Couldn't come on Alley Chats. He wanted to come on Alley Chats. Couldn't do it because he's part of that machine now.
Well, I don't think they understand the way things work nowadays. And
okay, now we're going to get into it. Now Lilith and I are going to turn this into New Media Lab and start talking about marketing because
exactly
they don't get it. There was a paradigm shift, and a lot of people just frankly don't understand it. Unfortunately, they're the ones that have the jobs where they can affect it. So until that starts to die off, or the paradigm shifts a little bit further, they're not going to get it. They're not going to understand the power of getting people out in front of the public, because that's really where it's at. Excuse me. You put Scotty Young out there. Here I am burping on your show, Phil. You put Scotty Young out there. It's all the coffee.
It's just Scotty like Young out there. Back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you put. Oh, wait. I have to go like this. Wow. That's my Charlie impression. If you put Scotty Young out on podcasts, he's got a great personality. Guess what? Everybody that listens to these podcasts is going to be like, I got to pick up these Scotty Young books. He's an awesome guy. I have Art Baltazar on all the time. Art does his own thing, even though he works for DC, even though he's worked for everybody. Here's a guy who created the Tiny Titans, but he still does his own thing. He's still like a completely indie guy. Spoiler, he might be doing a podcast for us soon. So, yeah. I fell into a rabbit hole there. But the bottom line is get these people out in front of a microphone, get them in front of the public, the ones that can talk. The guys that can't, okay, you know what? If you're not comfortable with there, then that's the one you don't push out there on the podcast or on the video things. But the guys like Art Baltazar, man, that guy can talk your ear off.
But here's the thing. If you're in a corporate stream, I used to do public relations. There's literally a thing called media etiquette. There's classes you can take. There's lists of questions people can ask not, and you can moderate it. There's ways around it. You can't miss out on that publicity, especially like now with this whole epidemic of like parasocialism. Everybody, wants a piece of their, they're the person that they want to get close to. They're creators. They feel very much entitled to that, and you kind of have to feed into it. That's just the way things work now.
Or you think the corporations are just scared that, they're like, oh no, someone's going to take something, this one said is racist or sexist, or, that they're just.
Like I said, there's ways around it. It happens every time because actors still do press junkets looking at you. You know who I'm talking about. If you listen to Capes, y'all know who I'm talking about.
I got to bring up a comment that we have in the chat here. Chad has a very funny one where he says, everyone sells out unless you're a monk in the industry, stares at Henry Rollins. That's hilarious. The other one that I thought of right away, which is the opposite, was Johnny Rotten. Johnny Rotten, think about it. Johnny Rotten was a monk in the industry and didn't sell out. But then if you look at a lot of the stuff he did, it's like, nope, he really did sell out in a lot of ways. Henry Rollins is probably your most pure. Lou Reed was another one that was pretty damn pure. That's if you're talking music industry.
Yeah.
But I'm a jazz guy. There's a lot of jazz guys that are pretty pure.
Well, yeah, they died penniless, but it was worth it.
That's right. That's right. Don't say that. I don't want to be that guy.
But I think you guys are actually kind of overshooting maybe the reason why they're not booking these interviews. And I think it's got a lot more to do with I have a podcast and a radio show, and I think there's too many podcasts. I think there's way too many podcasts. I think there's too many shows. I think there's too much media saturation. I think everybody had.
Why did your eye drift over to my box when you said that?
Burn.
You son of a.
Lil, there's a drop.
Oh no, we better cut this off. I'm having some kind of interference on Corey's end.
No,
Rob.
I think that there's too many shows, and for example, I just did a Kickstarter, and it funded and it did okay. And there was a guy who launched at the same time as me, who was doing a Wizard of Oz war one, and it was awesome, and it funded I think 5 times what it needed to fund, and he put in the last update that he did something like 80 interviews in the 35 days or whatever it was of the Kickstarter. And I started thinking about it. I was like, I really thought I kicked my own butt doing 12 in 30 days and 27 days or whatever I did. And then it's like the fact that he could do 80 interviews and not even, I don't even think he broke onto the front page of Bleeding Cool or Newsarama or Comic Book Resources, the big quote unquote institutions of comic books. Like, if he didn't even crack front page and did 80 somehow interviews, clearly we have too many interviews.
Well, do you think part of that too is part of the pandemic? Like when everyone was home, there was. I mean, again, I think
Everybody started a podcast.
Podcast exploded. Do you think Kickstarters went up too at that point?
Oh, they definitely did.
But here's the other thing with that, Corey. I actually, somebody's got a lot of noise. Is that me or?
I think that's Lilith.
Lilith, are you eating chips again?
I'm not doing anything. It's not me.
Okay. It was.
It's 9. It's like almost 10, and I haven't even had a drink. Be proud.
Wow. Lilith, day drinking time started at least a half hour ago. What is wrong with you? You got excited for Indie Talk. As far as the podcast go, and him doing 80 podcasts, I don't think there isn't the saturation that we're being told there is. If you look at the amount of podcasts that are out there, yeah, there's a ton of podcasts, but a lot of them aren't current. A lot of them are not actually producing anything, and a lot of them are calling themselves a podcast, and they do 4 shows a year. When this person's on 80 podcasts, first of all, I tried to promote Pod Life. I could get on like 3. They are shooting at everything they can, okay? But from a marketing standpoint, if you get a marketer that you're working with, they're going to stop you from doing that because that's just a huge waste of your energies. Doesn't mean you can't go on some small ones, but you also have to kind of pick and choose. 80, that's a hell of a lot. Now, if that led to them financing their book, phenomenal. I'll do 100. Thank you.
Exactly.
But if you think there's a saturation, well, there really isn't, because of those 80 podcasts, I would be interested to know how many have the listener bleed over. Mm-hmm. Did I, as a listener, hear that same person interviewed on 20 podcasts or 3 or 1?
Well, and it's a valid point, but that's kind of what I think that's sort of why they restrict the access, is because the truth of it is, how many would they have to go on to get the same effect as doing one Newsarama interview or doing one, you know what I mean? Like, it's just efficiency of the work. Or if they just shoot their own promo stuff and release it on Twitter and everyone copy and paste it.
Yeah.
Like, they started doing that now too, where, for House of X, Planet of X, Hickman sat down and did some sort of in-studio interview, and then they had the other creators kind of follow up when their books were coming along.
That's so sanitized. That's just not what like I said, that parasocial. I don't think they get how big that is. That's right. Not how you create parasocial relationships, and that's what you really need in this day.
I don't think
you need a rabid fan base, basically.
I don't think so. Too though, I think they're just very interested in, by completely controlling the content and letting you simply share what they made. They don't have to. They don't need partners in the industry, because they are the industry. We're making our shows based on what they create, so they don't need us as anywhere near as much as we need them. And so it's a dominant one-sided relationship. And so I don't think they're ever going to participate. And I don't see that policy changing. And I don't think it's based on anything other than the fact that they can either be in total control of the interview, or they can give all of that up and let a guy with 200 listeners bring down their creator.
Now, I interview quite a few people. I've only had one time. No, actually, I've only had 2 times where I had a PR person sit on the phone while I was doing the interview. They did not control. They didn't even ask. I had one that asked me what I was going to ask, and I gave a couple of BS answers. And then I said, these are BS answers. I shoot from the hip, but I'm not going to go into a place that's going to embarrass your person. And then the PR person on both of those sat on and listened, and then afterwards said, "Oh my God, that was so refreshing." The trust from that side of the coin has to be there as well. To your point, Lilith, when somebody's trained, or if they're just naturally good at it, it makes all the difference in the world. If they're going to get on and say something ridiculous and stumble through it and make mistakes, well, then the industry part of it does want to step in, because it is their image also that's getting played with there.
The concept has changed so much, because I remember when Ricky Diaz and I were doing like Heroes and Heroes Reborn, we were reaching out to actors left and right, and only like 2 or 3 people asked us to make a list of questions that we asked. And I'm talking Tim Kring, the creator himself, sat down with didn't want any list. He just said, ask what you want. And that was just, what was that, like 2013, 2014? Things have just changed so drastically just in the entertainment sphere.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay, are we going to talk about our favorite books?
Yeah. Yes, I have a ton of publishers that you guys probably have never heard of.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe Rob has. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a good chance I've encountered them, but you never know. I'm always looking for new stuff. And by the way, can we get 5 people on here?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, soon we're going to have a special guest, so I'm just going to say that.
All right. Yeah, just share the link. Yeah, I'll let them in when they can pop up.
When they knock on the door, we'll let them in.
All right. So I want to know. Oh, I've got an interview today. Okay.
Speaking of,
I just noticed that. Okay. So now that we've attempted to define indie books, we're probably going to break all the rules.
Yes.
I want to know, if you just spit one out for each one of us, not including your own book, Corey, what would you say is your top indie book? No, better than that. What's the one that first comes into your mind? Because you might go, you might spit something out, say Zot, and then be like, crap, that's not my favorite.
So my favorite book,
first one off the top of your mind.
So my favorite book of all time has a really indie vibe, but it's very much not indie. It's James Robinson's Starman.
Good call, man.
But if you put it in the context of the era of superheroes it's in, it's like the most indie superhero book ever. But but it's right in the middle of corporate 90s DC, where everybody had to be super edgy and anti-hero, and on the surface he looks just like them with the leather jacket and the non-costume, but the whole book is just so different, so much better than almost everything that's getting made at that point in comic books. It was awesome. I discovered it in the omnibuses when they first came out, like 6 or 7 years ago, and I was like, wait, someone was actually making a good comic book in the 90s? Where was I? How did I miss this?
That's like when I first read the question, that question from the 90s. I was blown away, and it was a DC imprint, but damn, was that a good book? And it was like, it didn't feel like any other DC book, but it was a DC book. So yeah, I get where you're saying. That has that indie mentality to it.
Also, it has the craziest crossover I think I've ever seen in modern comics. It's got the Starman, Batman, Hellboy crossover.
Oh my God, I never saw that one. Oh, I'm gonna have to seek that one out.
It's in one of the omnibuses in the back. It's either 5 or 6, I think. And,
I'm a big Hellboy fan, so.
Hey, there she is.
Hi, everybody.
You wanted?
Hi.
Oh, Molly pushing me out.
As usual. Thanks for having me on.
Hey,
Thank you for coming, Molly. Good morning.
We're willing to settle for your dad. We wanted you. I mean, come on.
Oh.
Really, you guys didn't hear it. I took a bunch of crap before we turned the microphones on about how the number 1 Southgate wasn't on yet. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, Molly, the question that I just asked is, if you think indie comics, what would you say? What comes to mind? It doesn't have to be your favorite, but what first pops into your mind? Let's put her on the hot seat.
Oh wow, thank you so much.
What would be one you love? Just pop one out.
So probably Lock and Key, because that is my favorite of all time. So I know you said no favorites, but
but especially when that came out, that had a definite indie feel to it. Very.
Oh yeah, for sure. Should I give some more? I have so many examples. I came prepared.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, you can turn your mics off. Molly's talking now.
Oh,
wow.
Go ahead,
That's hereditary. Don't worry
about it.
about it.
Me on. I was not signing up for this.
Oh no, she's driving through.
Taking crap on here.
Molly, I can mute him, so I'm
okay,
to do that.
Change her name to Mini Doom, would you?
Oh, I will. Okay.
Because I'm Master Doom.
I've never been on this before, so I have no idea. Oh, okay, I got it. I figured out how to. Mini Doom.
There we go. Yay!
She should be
all right,
Southgate Prime, though. I thought.
You wanted to go with another one, huh?
Yes, so Lock and Key, like books like Umbrella Academy. I read this one for a really long time. It's Lumberjanes. I always love that one. It's so good. But those are the first few that come to mind for me.
Good call, Mal.
I think I also need to add Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead and Invincible to the list.
Yes. Especially the Invincible. Yeah.
When both of those launched, it was kind of in this moment where Image was sort of DOA-ish.
Yeah.
They probably were right in the middle of, because I think for a minute they slid to fourth in the publishing, and then Invincible and Walking Dead blew up, and they haven't gone back again since.
Well, and Walking Dead was like nothing else that was out there, and it was such a good book too. It was like, where did this come from?
Well, I think I heard somewhere, didn't they say like, he wanted to do this zombie book, and they're like, yeah, I don't know about a zombie book, and he's like, oh, well, what if like aliens like created the zombie plague and stuff, and they're like, oh, okay, and then he just like wrote this regular zombie apocalypse book, and then I don't know. Once he hit this success, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're the aliens." He's like, "Oh yeah, I guess that's an."
I lied.
Yeah.
No, that's actually 100% accurate. I literally just watched some sort of documentary about Image, and he's basically the whole like finale to the thing, because I honestly don't know where Image would be right now if the last 10, 15 years Robert Kirkman isn't a partner there.
Agreed.
Kind of regrowing it.
Agreed. Yeah. Before that, they had Aliens Predator, and that had lost its luster. So
yeah.
I mean, seriously, and that's not a big slam, because I used to really like reading those Alien Predator books back in the early 90s, and they tried to get into film with Evil Dead and stuff like that. I mean, like they were trying to grow that license thing just like Boom. And then Kirkman came along and said, okay, I've got a publisher. I can put out some weird books. Outcast is a great book. I love that book.
I do wonder, like early in his relationship, it seemed as though that he was just able to kind of pitch at will to Image.
That's kind of how it feels.
That was something they used to do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because a lot of his conversations are with them. They sound like pitch conversations where he's like going through the process of creating a book, and they're giving him notes, which is, hey, great. I mean, it worked out for all parties involved, but it definitely sounds like he was somehow. I don't know if he had some sort of relationship with one of the houses or whatever, but
probably he probably was at that point, like when we were talking about Seth Rogen earlier. They reach a certain point and they get an office on the studio lot. They still have to pitch things, but they have like first refusal, and they can make missteps and get around it because, well, we're not going to give your office up yet. You're still making us money. Molly, you mentioned Lumberjanes. That's one that's really interesting because that's actually another avenue that has really grown in the last 20 years, is that YA area where there's some incredible books that are considered more YA. And I know comics were always considered for kids, but this is more targeted at that, which Lumberjanes is a big one.
Niche. They pick a very niche audience and really focus on what they want and need and feed into that.
I feel like that it also can go to anyone though, because like I feel like have I made you read that one yet? But I feel like anyone can read that book, but it is very targeted. And
I still have the scars. Yes, you did make me read it.
wow. Rude.
No, it was fun. That was a good book. I liked it. I didn't read all the volumes. I read that first volume. You were like, read this, and it was great.
I don't think I've read all the volumes either. They make like there's like at least 30.
Well, that's another area that I just thought of that because of Molly I've found are these like these graphic novels, these hardcovers and that like Ghoul Scouts. What's that other one, Molly, that Zach does?
Well, I was going to bring this one up, actually. It's Junior Braves of the Apocalypse. It is, like, my favorite book because it's, like these teenage boys fighting zombies, but it is so depressing. Like, it's so sad, and it's so well done. Like, it's not like a kid's book.
Yeah,
and so
right.
I've got both volumes in my room right now, and, oh, I love those.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, I think that speaks to the indie press too. Like, especially now, you've got ways you can self-publish through like Amazon KDP and things like that, where I think that's opened it up for a lot of publishers. Now with the pandemic, we've got a new era with that, I believe. But we know a lot of indie publishers, really small press, that put out a couple of titles, but they're a publisher and they put out some really great work. They are definitely on the outside of that inside thing. A friend of ours actually had her own thing, Rebecca Rothschild, and did Warshiner, which if you guys haven't read Warshiner, it's a phenomenal book. It doesn't come out very often, but it's amazing. We were doing one of our live microcons, and Rebecca, I had Tango sitting there, and Rich and Rage sitting there, and Rebecca said, "Oh my God, one of my dreams would be to be part of Tango." And before we left, she was hired, and they publish Warshiner now, and it's really cool. Like watching that indie, like, hey, we can merge, we can do whatever we want. We're not restricted here, and you get these great teams putting stuff out. And like I said, Tango, they have Infinium. If you haven't read that. And then they have Molly, what's the name of that? Their zombie book.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Descent of the Dead.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, it's great.
That's a good name for something. That sounds like a heavy metal album if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, Descent of the Dead. And it's a really good story, too. And they do an interesting thing where, and I think this is like how I'm going to say Netflix because that's the Kleenex way of saying it, but Netflix broke the mold. TV was American TV, 23 episodes. Your season started here, your season ended here, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you started seeing this other thing, following more the British thing where it was like, we're going to produce shows, we're going to do 8 episodes, we're going to do 12 episodes, and then we might take 2 years off. And shows like Once Upon a Time took that same idea and said, okay, we're going to do
spin-offs.
Well, no, they did. The first thing they did was they split the season. So you had the first half of the season was one story. Second half was a second story. So season 8, let's say, is really like seasons 16 and 17.
It's really funny that you say that because I was just thinking about that the other day because that show very much was like the precursor or like during streaming. Because it was following that streaming model, or it was creating a streaming model in and of itself. And Tango Comics does that same thing. So Descent of the Dead is like 8 issues, and that's it. If there's another volume, it's volume 2. It's another story. And I know that you see that with graphic novels like Preacher, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. Those are all that way. But really, if you watch those comics coming out, they were coming out, technically weekly or monthly. Even though it was a new story at Volume 2, it was still one comic run. For Descent of the Dead, they're done. Unless they decide to write another book. So it's pretty interesting.
I think HBO, I would give credit to HBO for creating that format.
You know what? You're right. You're right. I said Netflix just to make it general, but HBO really broke the format.
Sopranos, The Wire. I can't believe I'm blanking on True Detective. That was
Game of Thrones.
There is only 2 seasons
of True Detective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love both. The Matthew McConaughey season is just crazy.
It's one of the few shows that we only made it partway through. Martha and I watch a lot, right? We only made it, I think, 4 episodes in. It was so depressing and so hard to watch. We're like, God, it's so good. I need to rebuild my reserves before I can watch another episode. It's rough.
But their latest triumph, Watchmen. Yeah, that only might be 1 season, but
and everybody was very about how that would turn out.
I love that. I loved Watchmen.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. I think they told a very Watchmen-esque story. In a Watchmen universe, but also on HBO. So I thought
it was something new too. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, somebody else.
I want to shout out like my favorite like label at this time right now is Scout Comics. I'm absolutely obsessed with everything they do. I think their most recent #1 was Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists, but the biggest ongoing book they have, I think, is Stabbity Rabbit. That's okay, but Shadow Play is really good. Who else? What else do they have? They have Everglade Angels. It's just like they have a very large variety of things for different people. And I think a lot of other like smaller like labels don't do that. They kind of just hone into this one thing, like say Zenscopes, where it's just, fairy tale flavored horror. But they have, at Scout Comics, they have something for everybody, which I appreciate.
That sounds so cool. I actually have one more to shout out as well. Storm King Comics, because
yes, I love Storm King.
Whoa. Yes, they're amazing. They're so good. Like, I love their Redhead. What was the werewolf one with the girl Mia? I don't remember the titles, but I remember that I one point I was interviewing Sandy King Carpenter, so I got the list of a whole bunch of the comics on PDFs, and so I read through like all of their catalog.
Oh, Redhead. Wasn't it Redhead?
Redhead was a great one. There were a whole bunch, and I loved
Storm King's
all
excellent.
Of them.
Well, Storm King is one of these where they're taking a lot of the creators that maybe worked for DC, maybe worked like I interviewed Guy Dorian Sr., who is amazing. His artwork is freaking amazing. And he's like, I've drawn DC, I've drawn the big titles. Now I'm drawing Rom the Space Knight, and Storm King has me coming in and doing these one-shots, which are incredible. It's like, that's a true indie for me, is when you're out there looking for the great talent, you're willing to take a chance on people that maybe like Guy is a bigger name, but there are people out there that they're willing to take a chance on that maybe are in another country that aren't getting the same recognition here. You know what I mean? I love that.
It's very American-centric art, the industry.
Storm King, Mal.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Martha just brought one up. She walked through. That's why I had my headphones up. She just brought one up. Now, this is out of comic books, but I think it fits the indie spirit. We're big Linda Berry fans. You guys know Linda Berry? Okay, she had a comic strip. She actually, her books, she did those graphic novels that were like, remember the Garfield books, how they were in that weird format that was like 3x7.
Yeah.
Remember those books? Okay, Linda's books came out that way too. She did a lot with like Drawn and Quarterly. She had this great series about this character named Marlis. I can't stress enough how cool her stuff is. And she comes from that same world that like Matt Groening came from, which we know who that is. Oh, what's this? That's her style. Oh, here, I can show her style if it shows up.
Okay, I can see it.
Okay, yeah.
You got to check out Linda's stuff. She's like, and we were talking about like zines and about the importance there. That's what the world she's from, and really had a lot involved in creating. She's also an associate professor at University of Wisconsin in Madison. Oh. So you can go up there and talk to Linda Berry, which is incredible. But these outside people that did like the Eisner Award winners, the people that worked for Drawn and Quarterly that did stuff like that, these are the people I'm most interested in. I have to mute. I've got info coming in.
Is she just gonna run back and forth between the two of you? It's like,
Molly,
You know, I'm really interested
you'll
in
get her actually on the podcast.
Exactly.
And then she won't have to whisper and run back and forth.
We have room for one more Doom. Mrs. Doom.
But yeah, Corey.
So here's
another one out. Oh, never mind.
I'm sorry, I got to say one more thing, Phil, and then I'll let you talk. I'm sorry. Martha was blowing me, and she said with Linda Berry, she said, one of the things that was really important with her is how she addressed like body image in women and girls. So here's an example. It says, "Who's there?" Maybon stares in the mirror a lot. What is she looking at? I don't think it's just her face. And like she was addressing things that in comics, yeah, we're not seeing things where they talk about female body hair and dealing with, periods and things like that. I'm sorry I said that on your show, Phil. I know you get very sensitive about the word period. Phil never ends his sentences with a period either. What was that? Yes. Yeah, she did a great comic where they had a woman sitting on a beach, and the scene is about whatever is going on the beach, but she's got like hair coming out of her bikini everywhere, and it's just the greatest image. And she's just like, "Yeah, I got to take care of this." And you're like, "This is indie. This is outside of what you see." Because think about what they do to Power Girl. They're not letting hair come out of every area. They're putting a boob window. If Linda Berry's had a boob window, the boobs would be down at the belly button with the window way up here. So yeah, I just wanted to shout out about Linda Berry and about that type of person. I recommend picking up any of those like collections. Like there's one, I got one right here. I'm gonna have to go look for it while you're talking, Phil. I don't need to hear you. That's a joke. Let me see if I can find that, and I'll be right back. Go ahead, Phil. Show's yours.
Thank you, Robert. But yeah, Corey, you want to throw out any more books?
I think we get to now kind of there were a bunch of Saga, and who was the writer of Saga? All I can think is Fiona Staples as the artist, but the writer, he did a run of like 3 or 4 different indie books.
Oh, Brian K. Vaughan?
Yes, and Brian K. Vaughan wrote several different independent books where just like in a row he was really hitting it. Rick Remender does some really good creator-owned stuff that you almost forget how good they are like at Marvel. Like Rick Remender, just kind of everywhere he goes is awesome. I haven't read Uncanny Avengers, but Uncanny X-Force was great and all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out like, oh, he did a ton of independent work before that, and you're just kind of blown away by it. I really think probably one of my favorite independent books right now is actually from Image as well, and it's Reaver. It's Dungeons and Dragons meets like Suicide Squad kind of.
Wait, which book is this?
Reaver. Yeah.
All right, Molly, we'll get it.
Did we have to read that?
Yeah, the first 6 issues are crazy, and it kind of sets up a really cool character for the, I'm guessing, the rest of the quote-unquote series. We're in the second arc right now, and it's really, really good. It's absolutely worth checking out. But yeah, the whole first 6 issues is basically like a Dungeons and Dragons Suicide Squad.
That is so awesome.
What is that? The new
Dad, what are you holding
So
up?
I was holding this up just to show. This was what I was encouraging people to get. These, like, this is the new comics anthology. This one is so old, it's no longer new. But if you look at the names on here, Linda Berry's the first name on here. Matt Groening is on here. Los Hernandez brothers, awesome. You've got Harvey Picar in here. I mean, it's an older book, but seek these out. Look at what some of these cartoonists are doing, because those cartoonists are doing cartoons because they couldn't afford to make books yet. And then some of them went on to make books, and they were still indie, and then they got picked up and they became,
I think those guys, though, have kind of become, I think that format is more now considered zine.
Well, it is. It is. But at the same time, I mean, zine, we were zinesters. We went to Kinko's at midnight because you could convince the guy to make 10 more copies for free, and we made our own stuff. I got another one, Kitchen Sink Press. That's Scott McCloud. Another one I wanted to point out, which has not even come up yet, and this was the indie spirit back in the day, Fantagraphics.
Yes, that was on the list too for me as well.
Come on. There's nothing better than Buddy.
Oh.
You guys have read these, right?
No.
Well, Molly, you can't.
No.
You're not allowed.
Yeah, I know, because you always said not to. Yeah,
This
so
is
we
the
asked that question.
filthiest
We're a little
book.
uncomfortable because,
But which means she'll be reading it when as soon as I put it down.
as soon as we finish. That's what he did to Lock and Key.
Yeah, Peter
It was in the
Baggy
back
is
of the car, and I stole it.
Now, I put this one up, too, because this, Corey, to your point, I don't know if this would be considered indie anymore, but I still look at it. Oni Press.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you look at a book like Sixth Gun, phenomenal book. That I would not consider that a mainstream book.
It's probably not. I think that's probably a little bit closer to independent spirit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, it might be more now, but when that hit, when Sixth Gun came out, no way. Who was doing cowboy mystery supernatural books? You know,
Jonah Hex, duh.
Okay, that doesn't count.
Megan Fox, Jonah Hex, it already happened. Josh Brolin.
No, we don't talk about that movie. Please stop. I'm having war flashbacks.
Not even top 10 worst comic book movies. Like, there's been so many bad comic book movies.
And most of them are X-Men movies, but moving on.
A friend of mine has a small press too. You talk about zines. He's still doing zines. He's still taking, 8x10 or 8.5 by 11, folding it over, stapling it, sending it out. And that's King Cat Comics. You ever run into those? John Porcelino's work. Check it out. It's really great. It's we'll call it slice of life. They're very personal stories, but they're. I think it's funny because he'll tell stories because I went to high school with him. He'll tell stories about like sitting at the lunchroom, and I'll be like, "Wow, did he have a tape recorder?" Because that's exactly what we were talking about sitting at our table there. Yeah, it's really, really cool. But John's a great guy, and he's still out there. You can order King Cat Comics. I actually interviewed him on Alley Chats. He does all the zine conventions and that. He does Cake here in Chicago. I mean, I see him all over the place. And here's a cartoonist. I think he may have won an Eisner. I can't remember. But talk about indie. I mean, this is a guy making copies and stapling them himself at home. That's indie.
Now that's indie.
Oh yeah. Another one that comes to mind like that is Danielle Pioli, and she does zines, and she's an artist, and I've seen a lot of her zines and stuff around, and like she does little infographic thingies for like artists, and it's really cool. So everyone should go look her up.
Does she make something? Does she release a book right now? Why don't I know that name?
Oh, okay. I gotta go through. Oh, I gotta look this one up. This might take a second.
Well, she was interviewed on a show in our network.
I totally have not heard of that show. Obviously, I don't.
Yeah, she's on. Molly interviewed her on Read Between the Lines.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh, well, while Molly's looking that up, I do just want to shout out anything that Garth Ennis does. Like, I love Sarah, Walk from Hell, Jimmy Bastards. I just love his take and his perspective, and it's just such a through line in all his work that even though he doesn't say it's all in one universe, I feel like it could be.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a big fan of his. I can't remember. Is he the one that's problematic? There's a few of them out there that are problematic. Like, it's best if I don't know much about him but man, I love.
I don't think he's problematic yet. Knock on wood, because it's 2020, and 2020 hates us being happy.
Oh,
is this Garth Ennis we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just never got into his stuff. I never got into it.
After I started hating Superman, that's when I discovered him. I'll put it to you that way, and that's the aesthetic.
Don't tell Tyler.
As I grow up, I'm like, well, there's no lies here. So, like, I don't know. It's like when you fall out of favor with certain like characters, and you're looking for something that's the complete opposite, he will totally like quench that fire for you.
And Garth Ennis was absolutely the opposite. There were so few license.
The antithesis to
because he was so just out there. I think he had the good run on Punisher.
He made him competent, so that's always nice.
He
True.
he had a little bit of work in the '90s in the major label, and then he went to Preacher, and then he kind of never went back.
He definitely found his. He carved his slice.
Well, I think Preacher also probably gave him that financial flexibility where he didn't have to go back.
Right.
For a lot of creators, that's the big moment. Is like when something finally sparks with the readers, and then you never have to go back to being like, man, I got to make the $2,200 a month.
I don't want to raise eyebrows at Marvel, but I totally think that Hitman was definitely his Punisher. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
It wasn't. There was a ton of humor in Hitman. Like Hitman, and actually the few issues I've read, I actually do think that might have been him kind of firing on all cylinders, because it wasn't just the violent, dark stuff that he does now. There was a lot of humor to it, and I don't know maybe if that was the editor's influence or whatever. But also he does a whole. It's like he just murdered a bunch of people in a bathroom, and then Superman sees him on a rooftop and thinks he's about to jump, and like they have like a friendly conversation or whatever, and Superman's like, "Just call me anytime, buddy," and like he flies off.
Way to take the Frank Miller approach to Superman. He's an idiot. But
it was really funny considering there were like 3 dead people in the building below him, and it was just kind of a weird but like Superman kind of missed it. But it was definitely there was like an ironic humor that Punisher didn't have at that point. I
only like Punisher when he's in team-up books. I'll put it to you that way. Frank Castle is bad at his job, but I love his Deadpool when he teams up with Deadpool or Daredevil, just because they give Punisher that oomph. So maybe that's why I think of like Hitman as like his form of Punisher.
I think it's interesting when they cross over Punisher and make it seem like he's, I don't know, like the Punisher where he's the Ghost Rider. That's when it's interesting to me. I'm always like, what did they do here? They gave him
a personality.
Yeah, right. Molly, I was trying to think if there was any others that you had been reading. I know you're a fan of, for mainstream, like you like the Batgirl of Burnside.
Oh yeah, well they're amazing.
Which is interesting because if you look in the Batverse, that feels very separate. That almost seems like an indie book in that
it
world.
was a very distinctive move on their part. They definitely wanted to tune into a very certain demographic. I remember they were like on Tumblr and asking questions and stuff about what you want to see from this new form of Batgirl and stuff like that. So that's why it definitely does have that feel. That's why it is Batgirl of Burnside and not just Batgirl. It's that selfie taking kind of thing. They knew exactly. It's kind of like Punchline. Punchline is the new Batgirl of Burnside.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I love Batgirl of Burnside. I also loved that Miss Marvel comic that came out.
Yes.
Which
recently.
Also
the Miss Marvel one day.
Yeah, the one with Kamala or whatever her name is. That was
fun,
Yeah,
that's so good.
that also had a indie feel to it in that world where you're like, wait a minute, they're playing in that Avengers world, but this doesn't seem like it's part of it. Now it does. Now they've integrated, but in the beginning,
that early stuff, yeah.
I actually tend to not like the more mainstream ones as much, but those couple I love because they, as you said before, they do feel much more indie. And what was the one with the girl and shit? Moon Girl?
Oh yeah.
That one was excellent.
Yeah.
That was out of the Inhumans push, and I think she was the only character that really grabbed anyone's attention, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I
grabbed mine.
I want to recommend Squirrel Girl. Like, I can never recommend Squirrel Girl enough.
I will have to read that.
Such a Lilith book.
And Howard the Duck. Like, okay, if you want to read Marvel but have like an indie vibe, Howard the Duck and Squirrel Girl will give you that vibe.
Talking about Chip Zdarsky, Howard the Duck, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As you can tell, I stand Chip. I do. I make no secrets about it.
He's a good writer.
And here's one more indie one that I really like. It's called Shiro and Vex. One of our friends does it. I'm totally blanking on her name right now. But
that
it's
also
Rebecca
Rothschild that did Warshiner.
Oh,
and I'm drawing a blank on our other friend that does that.
And we know them both.
Yeah. And that's more of, now that's that newer style where it's not necessarily a book. Like Corey, you said a zine. It's not really a zine. It's more like a.
It's a webcomic.
Yeah, it's like a webcomic, but it definitely that's just it. There's so many different mediums they can work in now. So the umbrella has gotten bigger, you know, but it's definitely very indie, and it definitely stands with these other things. I have a friend, Joe Trapetta, that did a thing called Silly Daddy, which was a zine. He won an Eisner, and it's great. It's a fantastic book. It's just about him and his daughter, and it went on for a long time. It's a great book. That was a zine that became a comic, and has been published, I believe, as a hardcover at some point. Oh wait, Martha's chiming in again. Notice she won't come on camera, but she's got a lot to say to me.
Come on.
Leave Martha alone. She's a woman and it's early.
She has her puppets.
Let her have her coffee.
She doesn't even drink coffee. She's been up for hours. Just join us.
The snoring kept her up.
Okay, Shiro and Vex, Erica Swanson, and Katie Rodriguez, as well as Rebecca Rothschild.
Yes.
All right, we gave lots of shout outs there.
Okay, Philip, how can you not shout out our friends to the show, Alterna Comics, who does actual newsprint comics? Come on, Philip.
Alterna Comics.
Get out of your butt.
Wait a minute, you guys are friends with them?
Yeah, they follow us on. We've been trying to work out a time to have some of those guys on. It'll happen eventually, but yeah, they're friends.
I'm going to push them for Alley Chats too, because I love those books. I mean, I love their comics.
And you can get them on Etsy. I know a lot of shops don't actually carry them, but how you can directly support them is that they are on Etsy, and that way you get a guaranteed delivery every month of whatever comic that you want. So that's
so. Corey, as a creator, I have a question for you as a creator, because you're indie.
Okay.
What is the best way? Like she just said Etsy. Now that was one I hadn't thought of, but now I'm going to go search Etsy.
Oh yeah.
I always lean on things like Patreon and go like find the artists, support them there, and get on their radar there, and then follow them on social media. What do you think? Because the comic book stores are having some difficulty. They're going to have a paradigm shift. You watch. There's going to be a shift there that
it's already happening,
and it's going to bring it back. Like Liz. Liz Lilith. She and I had a big offline conversation about some of the really interesting things happening there. I can't really talk about, but it is happening. And I wonder what you as a creator, what you think the avenues are for these indie artists and for people to find them.
That's sort of the hard thing right now is there's so much social media access. You've got to really kind of pick and choose where you spend your time and invest your energy and like, she said Etsy, and it never crossed my mind ever to be on Etsy. I don't even know what kind of comic book presence is on Etsy.
I think Alterna is the only one. I just know that because it's in their social media that if your comic book store can't get it, won't carry it, that's another way to get it.
Well, I don't even necessarily mean as far as like the creators. I just mean like people who read comic books. Are there people who read comic books on Etsy?
Well, Etsy has a very, I know it seems like girly, but it actually does have a pretty diverse like cross-cultural section of people, like a lot of cosplayers, which of course a lot of cosplayers read comics, things like that. So it's definitely like in that wheelhouse.
Yeah, and like I use a lot of Twitter and I use a lot of Facebook.
If you use Pinterest, you probably use Etsy. There are certain like social medias that like kind of dovetail together.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Twitter and Facebook kind of dovetail together, and I think that's why I use both of them so comfortably. You got to try and go where you think your fans are going to be. But then you're trying to kind of predict who's going to buy your book. And the best thing about making something original is you're always surprised by who actually reads and enjoys it. So then you've got to kind of be open to the conversation about where your readers might be coming from and then kind of go to meet them. You know what I mean? Like, probably.
I feel so bad for OnlyFans too because of that paradigm shift that happened during the pandemic. Like originally it was for people who were kicked off of like Twitch or couldn't stream anywhere else or were making like cooking videos for their fans and stuff like that.
Cable bills.
And to each their own. But like I just like you have to like nobody predicted that. If the pandemic hadn't happened, who knows? Nobody would know what OnlyFans is probably at this moment except for the people who's we're already on OnlyFans.
As a single guy going through like Tinder, it has turned into a weird thing. When in a girl's profile, she's like, "Here to date, but also here's my OnlyFans account." And you're like, "What? Like."
Yeah, and with the celebrities that joined it and kind of ruined that environment on top of that, it's so horrible. And then people who don't like want to subscribe to Patreon because they don't they're not like sex worker positive or whatever. Then you have Subscribestar, you have Coffee, you have all these things to keep track of. So as an indie creator, I can only imagine the hell that it is, especially if it's just you. You're the social media manager. You're the regular business manager. Like, I cannot imagine.
So Phil, you need to make a Facebook group that is the indie group, so people can go in and discover artists and then just share their books and stuff.
No, don't do that, because
don't do that.
There's 100 of them, and I'm in.
Are there
8 of them? And you put your post.
Are they like the podcast ones where everybody puts their stuff up and nobody gets it?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Like I said, I definitely try to go out of my way to mention like different like indie comic books every single week, and just things that like have a different varied interest. Sometimes it's YA, sometimes it's horror, sometimes it's slice of life, sometimes it's psychological thrillers. I like Oni, I like Scout Comics. I feel like Aftershock, Valiant, they're really killing it right now. I love Image. Image is like in my heart. Almost like all my like indie quote unquote stuff is Image. Like, you know, Deadly Class, Black Science.
Oh my God, those are good ones.
Paper Girls, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's very much Image is just my wheelhouse right now.
Who did Hack and Slash? I've been reading that. Was that Image?
Hack and Slash has moved around a couple times. That's the one.
I'm having a lot of fun with that book.
Oh, isn't that Tim Seeley?
Monster, right?
Yeah.
That's been on about 3 different publishers at this point.
Really?
Yeah,
that's a good book. It's fun.
I feel like it's just. I think initially it kind of outgrew whoever they were with initially, and then they went to a bigger one, and then I think they might have gotten dropped. I think they were at Dark Horse for a while, and I think they might have gotten dropped from it. Just
interesting.
I think it kind of peaked, and then because they did a bunch of licensed crossover books real quick, where they.
Yeah, they had Chucky and some other ones. Yeah,
and Freddy and Jason and everybody, and I think that kind of was like. Boop.
Yeah,
I did want to highlight one Dark Horse book that's not like probably on a lot of people's radar, which is Mind Management, because it's kind of not in their wheelhouse, whether it's the art style, the writing, who that creator is, and stuff like that. So Mind Management is really cool for Dark Horse.
Cool. I'll check that one out.
That's by Matt Kint. So yeah,
that's the book that just did. They're saying it did 200,000 orders.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I couldn't believe it. It's really good, and it's something different. Like, it deviated from what Dark Horse was doing. I think people were tired of what Dark Horse was doing, and I can totally see people.
I don't know that I believe any major publisher has put out a book that got 200,000 orders that isn't Secret War Infinity.
Well, they probably ordered them or selling them on eBay, but you know, at eBay prices is probably what happened.
Yeah, so I was gonna say Marvel and DC aren't even doing those numbers anymore unless there's like 50
and that's with their own issues.
Right.
That's with their own issues.
The press release was like, "Oh, we just did over 200,000 in orders," and so like.
And they do what the book world does. They order them and sell them on eBay at like triple the price.
Now, hey, we got Jamie here.
Hey.
Now. I'm going to go in a minute, but I wanted to say one thing. I wanted to ask Molly a question. I want to do a little control question from a marketing standpoint. Molly, you're 13.
Yes.
Where do you find out about new titles? How would Corey reach you about his book?
Oh, hang on. Whoa. Corey would not do that. She's 13. We don't submit this to.
How would Corey's clean scrubbed book reach you?
Okay. Well, I usually look for new comics at the library, and then if I really, really, really like it, then I usually go and buy it, since I tend to not buy a bunch of books, but I do like to read everything. So
you like to search the shelves there.
Mm-hmm. Another good spot is what I found. This is going to sound strange, but it's actually Tumblr. Because on there, it has one of the best support. Right now, there's like an initiative on it to like pay artists and make sure that like artists and content creators are getting like their fair share. And so then they've got all these webcomics, all of these things, and they're really good. And so that's another spot.
And their search engine is actually like low key slept on. Their the way that their feeds are set up, it's really good, very personal. Which I said, with this parasocial situation, you want to come across as personal and as endearing as possible.
Tumblr is amazing. So everyone should go on it regardless. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever spent even a second on Tumblr.
Well,
Reddit's not too bad either. Just depending on what subreddit you're in. I won't lie. You have to be very careful with Reddit.
Yeah,
it's
you
a
do.
great place to go.
I'm just gonna say this. I'm sure it's gonna blow back in my face. I can't stand the Reddit communities. I'm a big Reddit advocate supporter, and there's like 3 comic book Reddit groups, each of them with tens of thousands of people in it. But if you try and sell your stuff there, they're like, they've killed so many of my posts, and they're like, you're not active enough in the community to post that. And it's like, well, I'm not active enough in the community because I'm busy making comic books, but I would like to be the creator of this community. Like,
yeah, the moderators are definitely on their high horses at Reddit and any subreddit that you're in. Yeah, you kind of have to I get it. As a creator that's very busy, I get it.
Right.
It's super annoying because it's like, well, I'm not going to spend all day posting on Reddit when I'm trying to do these other things. So it's like, okay, well, I can either be the creator in this group and post stuff and talk about creating my comic books, or I can just create my comic books and you guys keep posting covers for Marvel and DC.
Right. So Jamie's here. Jamie, I think this is the first time we've spoken on camera to each other.
Yeah, I know. It's been a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Jamie is another podcaster from our network, and he does Radio Free Endor and Ghostbusters UK, which are both awesome shows. So, hi, Jamie.
Hi. Yeah, Radio Free Endor at the moment is on hiatus because Disney broke me. It really did.
Oh, no.
It just really did. But I'm slowly getting back in the groove. I've got some plans in the pipeline, but the Ghost Heads one's going up and up and up. You know what I mean? And they're great comic books also at the moment.
Who's doing the Ghostbusters books?
I can't be on the show with him.
It's IDW are doing Ghostbusters.
You're gonna make me sound like an idiot. I can't do it.
Oh.
That's why Rob's here.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Well done.
So yeah, so the Ghostbusters books are good. Yeah, like Rob said, who's putting those out?
It's IDW at the moment, but they've done no end of crossovers. I very much get digital when it comes to the Ghostbusters comics, but I did go out and get the physical Transformers crossover because you put them all together and they form like this massive poster. It was quite good. I like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Good story. Yeah, good story as well. And then hopefully, if EctoCon, which is a big, massive Ghostbusters convention that's hopefully going to happen this year in November. It's been pushed back. There's going to be some writers and artists from IDW who did the Ghostbusters comic going to be there. So hopefully I can get some signatures as well.
Well, that'll be
nice.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so ready for conventions to come back because I was never able to do
know.
it before.
Man, it's just like...
And now there's no conventions.
There's so many cancellations. It's getting ridiculous.
Well, and you talk about how you find artists. I mean, for Molly and I and Martha, we haunt Artist Alley. That's how we know everybody. And that's how we find all these really fantastic books. And, you know, you talk about some of these big indie ones like God Hates Astronauts. I love that book. And Haunting Artist Alley, I'm standing there talking to this guy, and all of a sudden I realized I'm standing in front of the booth. I'm talking to the creator of God Hates Astronauts. You know, it's like it's awesome. Bill Winningham that did what's that? Fables. Same thing happened there. I'm sitting there talking to this guy, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, are you Bill Winningham? He was like, oh yeah. You know, it's like it's crazy. I have another one, and I don't know who it was. So I don't know who, but I got in this conversation one day. It was at the end of a convention. I'm walking out. I've been talking to everybody. I'm tired of talking, believe it or not. And there's this guy sitting there, and he's just like leaning against the table. And, you know, we're talking like, yeah, there's a long convention. We're all sweaty and blah. And I don't know, somebody walked by with like a Batman 66 shirt on or something. And I said, and that was a newer book out. And I was like, that's a great book. I said, you know what? I should have tried to find people involved in that. And he goes, oh, that's my book. And I don't know who it was, but we had this great conversation all about Batman 66 before he told me that he was the one that did the comic.
Oh, that's
Oh my
amazing.
god.
It was so cool.
That's
And that's the kind of thing. It's like the time I always talk about the time I went to this con, and I'm talking to these people, and there's this old guy sitting there next to me, and he's just sitting there and he looks exhausted, and all of a sudden I realize
He's looking.
no shade
in
here,
the
but
mirror.
no shade, yeah, right. But it's Chris Claremont.
Oh.
And he's just sitting there. He wasn't behind a booth. He was just tired. He just sat down and was just sitting there. And when I realized who it was, I was like, I don't want to be that person that walks up. He's trying to relax for a second. And then, of course, somebody walked up and went, "Oh, my God, are you Chris Claremont?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Damn.
I'm like, "Oh, man." That was the beauty of cons. You
You always find that, don't you? You when you see artists, you think, I don't really, I'll be the better person and not rush up like a fan, and then somebody does it right in front of you. You think, I should have done that.
Yeah, damn. Well, the one time I met the guy that played Baymax in Big Hero 6.
Oh,
And he and I actually have some mutual friends. So I was like, "Oh, wait, you know so and so," and we're talking. Nobody recognized him because he's the voice of Baymax, right? And then he goes, "Wait a minute, I think I saw you. Were you in the interview area?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Wait a minute, was your daughter interviewing Timothy Amundsen?" And I go, "Yeah, that's my daughter." He goes, "Can I meet Molly?" Yes, I'll bring her over.
That's
it was
on your tombstone.
You're the middleman. Deal with it, Master Doom.
Yep. So, and then Molly was younger. She'd be better now. She was completely nonplussed. Even though she's like, "Oh, you're Baymax."
I was like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah, she had nothing to say. I'm like, "Oh my God!" And he was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing now?" Hey, Timothy, because Timothy Amundsen, she did an interview with him, and the guy was like, he was so excited to get interviewed by your daughter. He was so excited, and he talked about it on the plane and everything. Like, he kept talking about it. So he goes, I was hoping to meet this kid, and he goes, "You're her dad." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." It's
that's the kind of t-shirt. Molly's dad.
really seriously.
Yeah. Dude, that's like when we met Robert England.
Yeah.
And he spent the entire time trying to get me to interview him, and I had no idea who he was. I was like 6. And then Dad, who's like freaking out.
I'm standing there with Chris Mao from the Blue Box Cafe. The two of us must have looked like the biggest fanboys. We're like, "It's Freddie. It's Robert England." And we're trying to talk to him and be cool, and we're not cool. And then all he wanted to do was talk to Molly. And then he grabs, like, they really were reining him in and like watching, like, he can't sign anything without paying and all that. He grabs a thing and he writes his phone number on. He goes, "This is my cell phone number. If you want an interview, I would love to talk to you." And he hands it to Molly. And I'm like, he won't even say, no joke, boo, to me. It was crazy. And of course, she's like, "Who are you?" And now she's best friends with Freddie. Yeah. Same thing happened with Elvira. She was at the same con. Elvira was really nice to her. Chris and I, she was like, "Okay, hi,"
Well, that also happens with me now when people really like me. Apparently, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I don't think.
Well, it's either that or people really don't like me.
Oh. Ooh.
Oh.
My little brother is the producer on my show, and oh, nice.
Oh,
Nice.
don't. Nobody tell Charlie.
We interviewed a Hall of Famer for the Houston Oilers, Haywood Jeffries. I think he's a Ring of Honor, not Hall of Famer. We do the whole interview, and my little brother's my producer, so he's just there handling sound and all that. And I do a 10-minute interview where I make this guy sound like a champion of the world. At the end of it, he thanks both of us. He forgets my name, and then he tells my little brother that he's awesome and that the Oilers would hang out with him anytime. And I was like, "You said 7 words in the last 2. Like, what just happened?"
That's my life. That's my life, Corey.
It's like, "You gotta stop coming on these interviews, man." He's like, "You don't need a producer." No, I do, but you just gotta stop coming. Like, you can't be here.
Speaking of which, the only reason I came on this show is I thought Luca was going to be on, but we got Phil.
I can bring him on here.
Don't wake the baby up.
No, he's up.
Okay, so
also a terrible con story. I guess if we're gonna do these, I won't say who it was. I met him in the interview. I interviewed him at Conclusa, and he basically gave away a bunch of stuff that he was about to be working on with one of the big 2 publishers. the next day he sees me walking around and he tells me, "Hey, I screwed up. I wasn't supposed to announce any of that stuff yet." He was working at one of them and he was moving over to the other one, and he told me like his next 2 projects at the other one, and the one he was working for of the big 2 was like, "Oh, you can't do that yet. You're not done with. Our work is still coming out, so you can't talk about your next work yet." So he had me cut stuff from the interview, and I did it gladly. And he kind of promised like some exclusives down the road for that, and then never returned an email.
Oh.
And that happens. Phil,
Yeah.
Phil knows.
Yeah.
He's the producer. He handles all that. I'm done with rejection.
As I was telling Nico, I was like, "Yeah, go ahead and just cut that stuff in the interview." He's like, "Are you sure? Like, this is good stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, just cut it. It's fine." And he was like, "I don't think he's gonna. He's not gonna email us. He's not." And he never did. He never did.
Yeah, that happens.
But
all right,
yeah,
I am going to bail here. I'm about to bail.
We're
We appreciate your time, Master Doom.
You see how Rob Southgate's hour is, you know?
Yeah.
Been on ages.
I know.
I feel
it's all
I
morning.
feel like you've all been podcasting, been videoing since like 24 hours, because you was on last night, Phil, and I went bed, and I've come on, and you're still on. I'm like,
That's how it goes at Capes and Lunatics, sir. That's how it goes.
Well, from a Southgate Media standpoint, we are going to do another. We're going to do a holiday get-together thing. Jamie, you are going to be on that one finally, and you're going to get to be on with everybody.
Cool.
And Corey, I loved talking to you when I talked to you a couple weeks ago. I loved having you out here. So we will definitely be talking a lot more. This was a lot of fun.
All right, I'm gonna go too. Bye, everybody. Thank you for having me on.
Bye, family.
Well, I'll see you upstairs. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'll come on when I have the time, anytime.
All right.
So we'll see you in 2 years. Thank you, Master Doom.
Thanks, guys.
But yeah, we never really got into it. Corey, what do you want to tell people about your book?
Well, they missed their opportunity to help fund it with the Kickstarter. There are a couple shops that I have. So I have 2 books out right now. I have Another Day at the Office, which is a comedy about a cop in a world full of superheroes. And then I did a Kickstarter launching a new title called DMA, the Department of Metahuman Affairs.
Ooh.
And it's essentially a mashup of X-Men meets The West Wing. And so it's about how politics affects the world at large, but also about superpowers and superpowered people. So it's got a fair share of violence, but also probably too much exposition because I like to hear myself talk. Those are the 2 books that I have out. And so right now on shelves of about 6 stores across the country, you can get Another Day at the Office. If you're in Houston, there's 2 stores, Space Cadets, Collection, and The Adventure Begins Comics, Games, and More. And then Arkansas and I think Tennessee is where I sent the other books to. And then Titan Comics in Dallas has 50 copies.
Could you do the artwork as well as the?
I don't. If I had an ounce of talent, I would draw all day long. But I was gifted with no talent. But
yeah, good at storytelling.
Yeah. Which I'm learning everyone can do. No, I'm just kidding. The first issue was done about a year ago, and then it's a brand new creative team for this second run here. And this is a first of 3 issues that we just released last month. For Another Day at the Office, and it's got a really fun cover on it. I'll tell you one thing you learn as you self-publish is the quality of the book is like 100 times better from the first issue to this second project. And people probably aren't supposed to say that, but the first issue, like I had an issue with the colors and letter right at the end, and we couldn't get our file formatting correct. So there's some stretching that happened when it went to printer. There was just some silly rookie mistakes. And then the second issue is so darn pretty in comparison, and there's ads, and then I got to write like a thank you page, and like it's just vastly different in quality from the first issue of Another Day at the Office, the standalone, to the first issue of the 3-issue miniseries.
Would you say it's a steep learning curve, or?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you don't know. It's so crazy because you don't know what you're doing until you're holding the printed copy, and then you can go back and count all your mistakes. Because a lot of the stuff you're doing, especially modern, you're doing digitally, so it's hard to visualize like the ratios and all the different, some of the stuff that some of them. So this doing this first issue of the 3-issue miniseries was such a pain in the butt because the artist that I'm working with is great, but there was a language issue, and he was letting his scanner just set the page settings to whatever the scanner thought was appropriate. And so it would scan it, and then its little AI would decide something and send it. And so every single one of the pages was a different ratio, dimensions, and DPI. And we didn't catch it until about 3/4 through the project. Because in my head, why would somebody scan something at different dimensions every single time? But it turns out he wasn't doing it. It was a scanner. So we had to have like multiple conversations to finally get it right. And essentially we had to start the book over. Because the original colorist no longer had time to go back and redo the 18 pages she'd already done. And then the letter at that point was like, it kind of feels like your project's cursed, and I'm not going to get any pages in front of me again for a long time because you've got to redo everything. So I'm going to jump off also, which is totally, look, they got to make their money. They do it for a living. It is what it is. But I basically had to start over probably 3 different times this book, which definitely steepened the learning curve.
Yeah.
But it's out, and it looks pretty, and I'm happy with it. And
definitely a labor of love, Corey.
it definitely... It turned into a labor of hate about 80% through. When you're
That's
on
any art project, though.
It's my baby, but at the same time, like everyone has a favorite kid. They don't like to brag about it. This will forever never be my favorite kid, just because by the end of it, I was like, I'm just grateful it doesn't have fuzzy pages and stuff like that. Like, I was just so ready to I was like, at the end, I got the final letters back from the letter, and they were like, hey, what do you think about? I was thinking about maybe, and I was like, no, we're done. The book is over. I'm sending it to the printer tomorrow. I don't want to ever look at this again. And then the printer had like stupid file transfer issues and took like 3 tries. And I'm on the phone with the printer, and at one point I just told her, I said, listen, this is going to sound like I'm angry at you. I'm not angry at you, but I don't care what happens. Just print this stupid book. And she was like, yeah, no, I totally understand that. And I was like, okay, let's just print it. But it turned into a labor of hate right at the end there. It was about 7 months on this first issue because of just thing after thing after thing after thing, and it was but it's all working a lot better now. But
how many copies did you sell?
So the very first one, the standalone, we did almost 500. We did about 365, and then Space Cadets is part of the Comic Book Shopping Network, and Miss Jen King is awesome, and she ordered 100 with the variant, their logo on the back cover, and that was the very first variant ever for the Comic Book Shopping Network. And so she ordered 100. That took us about 465. Yeah, which I was thrilled with for an independent, just selling it. And then for the second series here, this one that we just did, we did about 250-ish. And honestly, it's because this time was really dead set on selling to the stores. And right at the end of the year, the store said, hey, how about you hold off until February, March-ish?
Yeah.
I said, okay. And then when you check your calendars, February, March-ish is COVID. So late February, early March, I started getting back in touch with the stores, and they were like, hey, we're going to hold off. We're hearing some things. And then all of a sudden, Diamond closed, and stores closed, and states closed, and it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. But it was also I was grateful for the stores that stayed in, and then you're just grateful for friends, families, and interested people. And so at that point, it's definitely becomes a labor of love at that point, because you're like, you're not doing what you could be doing because of the situation, but you're just like, let's just do it anyway.
So you do everything yourself, like all the marketing, all the phone calls, everything? Wow. You're a brave soul, sir.
I'm a crazy person.
So is there like is there a website or anything where people could buy your books directly, or?
There is. I have a little Squarespace, CoreyDLG.square.com.
And that'll be in our show notes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you could send me that later,
I will
put it in our
send you
show
the link for sure. And right now, all that they can buy is the digital copy of my first issue, and that's because I just did a Kickstarter for DMA, and so those guys are going to get it first as soon as the money clears. Which actually supposed to be this week, I guess, the 25th probably. The Kickstarter ended the 11th, so 14 days is what I was told. And so as soon as I get the money in on that, we're going to print. And I got to take care of those guys first. But yeah, I do everything myself, including the mailing and all that. In the last year and a half, I've probably mailed about 450 things, just envelopes, and boxes. And...
Indie comic book creators single-handedly keeping the USPS afloat.
Bro, they talk about the USPS and they're like, "Do your part." I'm like, "I am." Like, where's everyone else? Like, let's all mail out 450 comic books, and then they'll all be fine.
I'm just looking at your Squarespace site now at the comic. Some good covers.
Yeah. No, thank you. I really. Are you looking at the DMA cover?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when Another Day at the Office issue 1 of 3 didn't sell well because of COVID, I think DMA is a really, really, really good book. And I didn't want to hold myself back and say, well, did I do everything I could to try and market and sell this book? And so I went ahead and did the sexiest cover I could think of as a selling point for this book, because I wanted to just go balls to the wall. How much can I do everything possible to sell this book? And so the cover's a little spicy. Spicy.
I'll say that.
I can't wait till that comes out. We're definitely going to review it here for sure.
What is the difference between the $5.99, the $16.50, and the $60 ones?
Okay, so the story there is the concept that I wound up taking over to the Kickstarter. I guess I really do need to take those pages down before people start ordering that. And then but the story is, it's called Adopt a Comic Series. And so the idea was, if you were to buy the $60 package, you were prepaying for the next 12 issues of the book. And so as each issue comes out, you're already getting them in the mail. Like the old school subscribe to the X-Men type stuff. And ideally, this is going to be a monthly book. It's going to take a little while to get into that rhythm. Right now it's a lot of start and stop, because like we did the Kickstarter to launch it. So that's the funds I need to produce the second issue and to print and ship the first issue. And so stuff like that. But once we get into a rhythm, it's going to become a monthly book. It's about 5.5 weeks of production, 6 weeks of production. So once we get in a good flow, we'll be able to put out a book every month. And the middle one, the 15 one, is the first arc. And so the big idea there was, either if you just want to buy an issue, that's fine, and that's great, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate the support. But if you wanted to pre-buy the whole first arc or the whole first year, that helps me a little bit more, because it also then tells me, these guys are taking the ride with me.
Stuff, yeah.
And on the Kickstarter, about 35 people between digital and print jumped on that. And I did really super limited options on the Kickstarter. Literally, there were no other rewards or incentive. It was literally just buying the book or buying the digital copy. There weren't even T-shirts. There weren't prints. There weren't 3D goggles. There weren't trading cards. It was just buying the book or buying the book. And people kept, in all the interviews, people were like, "Oh, that's kind of
old school,
interesting." So finally, I added the option that for $100, I will name a character after you. And then like 3 people signed up for that, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So
I'm in the wrong game, mate.
I'm doing a really great thing with one guy. He's a father. He's a friend of mine from high school. We grew up together, and he's a father now. And his son, this is probably not the correct medical term. I haven't gotten all my words in order yet on this. But his son was born with albinoism, and so he essentially he was like, "Can we go one step further? And can you have an albino character?" And I said, "I will absolutely do that."
Oh, that's so nice.
So that was a really cool thing I thought it was an awesome thing for a dad to do for his son, to give him somebody,
a character to look up to. Yeah,
exactly. Somebody.
Well, I hope you didn't make him as a killer.
Yeah, I was gonna say that only like albino characters that I know, they're like the evil characters in the comic books, like for Black Lightning and things like that. So yeah, that will be really nice.
Yeah, and so like we've been going back and forth on like powers and like what he would like to see and all that, and very much I'm kind of giving this character up as far as control and all that. And like he was basically like, yeah, he really has to be a good guy, and I'm like, no, I get it.
Yeah, cool, good idea.
But it's been a fun thing to do. It's been interesting, and so yeah, hopefully within the next 3 weeks it's in the U.S. mail, and then we'll go from there. If the U.S. mail still exists in 3 weeks,
I think it will.
You don't know our poop hole of a country, okay? Nothing's a given at this moment in time.
Well, basically all I know is what I see on the internet, actually, because I don't really trust our news media. That's for sure.
And then we lost a Supreme Court justice last night.
Exactly.
It's about to be the
election season. Yeah, it's an absolute clusterfuck over here.
I can't wait. Do you know what? I can't wait for the.
See, you're lucky. You have like a 6-week election cycle, and it's over. We have 3 years.
I know. It's like when every time you have the debates between the president and whoever, I've always watched them. I've always found them really, really entertaining, and I can't wait for this one because this is going to be entertaining.
We're like the reality TV show.
Hey, that's what Charlie can live tweet.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I don't think
that's for the Patreon, though.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't even think they're gonna do it at this point. I think between COVID, them both being elderly, and at this point they just can't agree on anything. I don't think they're even. I think they both have asked for 3 publicly, but I don't think either one of them. I think their teams certainly don't want either one of them on stage more than 15, 20 minutes unscripted.
Well,
or something.
Yeah. But when you
How do you
listen
feel about
to
Patreon? Oh, sorry. How do you feel about Patreon, Cordy?
I've never had a great opinion of it. I think it's specifically. I think a lot of what we do is specifically designed to support probably just artists.
Right.
As a writer, there's not a lot of opportunity for me to just go to like 40 to 80 people and show them something every 10 days and everybody be okay with that and continue to fund my mission. You know what I mean? Like, but as an artist, I can take a group commission concept every 10 days and then also show some daily sketch work. And a lot of people are comfortable paying, between $5 and $9 to that person monthly, and more power to them. But it feels like it's very much kind of geared up for just one thing.
Specific niche. Okay.
Yeah. And now I know that there are like shows and other people who do stuff on Patreon. I think there's even some musicians who have really figured out a way to monetize their group of fans.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's limited in who it's designed to support, and it's probably through no one's fault. It's just that the internet
visual
it's very visual. It's very visual, and there's not a lot of room for. It's hard to break through and break out on stuff like that.
I find it really, really hard to get my head around Patreon. I keep meaning to ask Rob actually about it, but I've got a Patreon page, but it's so complicated to get it up and running. And
well, and it's hard to find who you're looking for. Even everyone, like I support a couple artists on Patreon, and I'll see on their Twitter page, like, oh, hey, if you love these sketches, there's way more, here. And then on the app, it's almost impossible to find them. And you're like, why is it? You have to use your laptop to open the Patreon page to find their page, and then you can. And it's become like a 9-step process, and it is very cumbersome and just unwieldy. Like it's not as simple as it should be, and that's the frustrating part of the process too.
Yeah, I did
I'm
use
always
a
looking-
company called.
Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I used this one called Buy Me a Coffee, and to get the money off them was so hard. In the end,
Oh, really?
I just quit it. I quit it, and it took over a year just to get £60 off them, which I'd collected. Right, and so what I did is I started photoshopping derelict coffee shops and put "Buy Me a Coffee" above their signs and flooded their webpage with them, saying, look at it. You know what I mean? It's not. And in the end, they just went, look, here's the money, go away. And that was it.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah. So don't use that. Don't buy me a coffee. Don't use them.
Yeah. All right. I think I'm going to wrap this up. This was supposed to be Rob Southgate an hour. So we see how Rob hour is. So yeah, one more time, Corey, promote your books, promote anything you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Facebook.com/NerdThugRadio. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else at CoreyDLG. And you can just keep asking your stores if they've heard of Corey DLG and his Another Day at the Office and the DMA. And yeah, just if you're around the social media and you see me posting, feel free to follow. I do follow backs on Twitter. Yeah, Corey DLG pretty much everywhere you go. CoreyDLG.squarespace.com is where you can find the page. And I guess I got to go take down those. I think the wholesalers are still up too for the Another Day at the Office. Got to take those down too. But you can buy digitally the first issue of Another Day at the Office, and very, 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 very soon I'm going to make available digitally the return to Another Day at the Office. So please check that out, guys. And thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey,
Thanks
thank you
for coming.
for your time. I know you told us how busy you are. So thank
Jamie,
you for-
we definitely have to get you on an episode for sure, a full episode.
Yeah.
I apologize for being late to this one. I don't I know what time I'm supposed to be somewhere for Central Eastern. I've gotten it wrong. I don't know. Every time I've scheduled stuff and then I show up and they're like, where have you been? And I'm like,
yeah, well, I'm on UK time, so it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I could. What time is it there right now?
It's like 5 hours ahead, right?
Quarter
So it's
past
like
4.
4. Yep.
6 hours ahead. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's all right. That's all right. We talked some time
We
Australia.
have an Australian triplet, so we understand.
He's like 12 or 14 hours ahead. It's so.
It's kind of funny because when my
sister took a trip to Australia in high school, and it blew my mind that it was like a 16 hours literally or 24 hours in the air from leaving from Houston, Texas, because they go to California, then to Hawaii, and then I think they do Japan and then down to Australia. And I was like, well, that's remarkably inefficient. That is a long time in the air.
Yeah, it is. Long time. Yeah.
And
my sister did the same trip to Australia for New Year's Eve to New Year's Day. And then just after 12, she phoned me up to wish me Happy New Year. And I was like, what's it like next year? She went, same as last year. It's like time travel.
It is like time travel. And they told her to get a frequent flyer code because you spend so much time flying just to get there and back that you qualify for a flight ticket anywhere in the continental United States immediately once you get home. That's how much air miles.
Ray, why aren't you in Florida yet? Bring the well, no, don't come to Florida just yet.
Florida.
Give it 3 years. Give it 3 years.
I'm supposed to be in Florida. I'm supposed to be in Florida now. I'm supposed to have had me 50th
Are you supposed to be
birthday
about
in
to?
Florida. Oh, cancelled.
I'm in Pennsylvania, so less of a hotbed of COVID in Florida.
Oh,
God,
man. I'm ready for it to be over, but I think everyone is.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, and Jamie, why don't you promote your shows and whatever else you want to promote?
Well, you can find me at ghostheadsukpodcasts@gmail.com if you want to send me any messages or anything really. I'm also on Radio Free Endor. You can find all the older episodes on the Southgate Media Group, of course. I usually do Halloween specials, but I need to do but I have got the older ones still online, and they're really good like story ones I've wrote. But mostly I'm doing Ghost Heads. That's really, really cool. So, yeah. Oh, and I'm doing a deep dive of the real Ghostbusters for next month, which is 35. It was 35 years ago on my birthday. So I'm going to do a deep dive on that on the next episode. So yeah. So any ideas? Send them to me, and I'll put them in the show.
What do you mean the real, like the
cartoon
Warren family?
Yeah, the cartoon, the real Ghostbusters
with Slimer.
What?
There
was a cartoon called The Real Ghostbusters?
Yeah, it was based on the movies. Yeah.
Oh, it was on
That's from like what, the mid '80s, like '88 or something like that.
Yeah. Came out 35 years ago. So yeah.
Okay.
But they've just they started to re-release them.
Bill Murray and all that, right? Am I crazy?
No. But it's got the guy who did the voice to Garfield and Frank Walker, who did Scooby Doo. He did a voice there in it as well. Oh, there's loads. Yeah, there's loads. Quality vintage cartoons.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually like high concept for the time too. It came on like ABC on Saturday mornings. Yep.
Yeah. I was thinking back. I must have thought I was a little kid watching them, but it turned out I was 15. So there you go.
That's funny.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a great time. We worked our way around Rob Southgate. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
It's been great. Thanks for inviting me on. I'll be glad to come on again. I've got to tell you, when you're talking about comics, I'm a big fan of vintage comics. Especially the English vintage comics and horror comics. If you ever heard of a comic called Scream that came out in the 80s, I've got them all digital, but they were great. The artwork was fantastic. So that's always something. If you were near Halloween, you want to do it.
English comics, yes. We don't really talk enough about across the pond comics.
Yeah, I'll send you some links. You know what I mean? So you can have a look at them.
That might be an excuse to have Jamie on. Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
Well, thank you very much, guys. It was great to meet y'all. Lilith, Phil, y'all been a lot of fun. Jamie, you sound too wonderful to be on the same show as me. So this will be the only time we're ever on the air together.
Yeah, I didn't realize my room was just cluttered with geek stuff. Proton.
Well, Phil can relate.
Proton, Star Wars.
No, it's the accent. That's it. It's too perfect. All right, thanks, guys. Y'all have a good one.
All right, thank you.
All right.
You take care. Thanks a lot. See you later.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
So, little help.
Let's go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
what?
I was just gonna pop out of the window, but I'll let you finish.
All right. I was just about to say thanks, Phil, for having me on, and thanks. Is that Lilith?
Lilith.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lilith. Yeah. Thanks for butting in every now and again. Sorry about that.
That's all right. All right. Yeah, but yeah.
All right,
we'll get back on. All right.
You take care.
Have a good rest of the day.
Will do.
All right, Lilith. Let's get out of here. See what this rock.
Hit the music.
See what this rock does to us. Oh no! What about our plugs?
Oh God! Just hit a button already, Philip.
All right, let's just get out of here. You know how to get a hold of us. capesandlunatics@gmail.com. Again, if you're an indie creator, come on.
We'd love to have you, especially anybody from Alternative Comics.
Exactly. So capesandlunatics@gmail.com. Easiest way, and we're all over social media. But for another week, we have been your capes. A lot of us.
Capesand Lunatics. You're welcome, Charlie.
Always have to have some drunk say, ampersand.
I'm not drunk. That's the beauty of Saturday mornings, Philip.
Yes.
Friday nights, anything goes. Saturday morning, I I try to be sober for you guys.
But I think that was a nice episode 175.
Oh yeah, super sized, giant sized.
Thank you, everyone, and well, it's good to see you, Rob Southgate.